what Bodhicitta does is clarifies your vision. You see with your heart what the problem is. You see the causes of the problem. You see the karma. You see the group. From the clarification of the problem comes I'll use the phrase conscience speaking. It tells you what can be done. Generally, it is very little, because what happens in these cases is that you realize, or you don't have direct karmic involvement. It's not your place to be directly involved or interrelated with this grouping there karmically. But you do have a responsibility. We're talking about us as a group. Others may have direct karmic responsibility, in which case they act. We're talking about all of those that are heart-based, of course, that are disciples, that are meditators. Right? What we have a responsibility is to assist in the cleansing of the nadi stream of this planet. Wherever there's sickness and disease, wherever there's dark brotherhood influence, our function is to send our light and our guiding compassion to cleanse that arena, that particular aspect. With regards to doubtful, for instance, it's just an example because we've seen these trouble spots come and go, come and go, come and go. I mean, Iraq is a far worse situation from one point of view. There's many more millions involved. But let us look at that. What your energy does is act like an atomic bomb explosion. It should not be directed to any individual because that can aggravate his suffering. What it is to be directed towards is the entire grouping, the entire situation. You clarify the psychic atmosphere there, and you send your light through the dark pathways to cleanse the mind structures of the causes of the problem. But when you get to those mind structures, you find there's very little that can be done. They're so engrossed in evil doing. It's like trying to clean out the mind of an alcoholic while he's drinking his alcohol. You're not going to be very far. Therefore, you ride the waves further afield to the next strata up, and then you get to government agencies, to those that have ripped off that country for a long period of time, the real causes of that particular distress. There's where your psychic energy can do some good, some cleansing of minds or cleansing of hearts. These people are further away from the situation in their minds, and because they're indirectly responsible, but often they convince themselves they have nothing to do with it. And here's where your energy field is directed to change their thinking, to give them insight that they actually do have something to do with it. The people with the guns that are doing the raping and the looting and the pillages are also victims. Right? They're victims of a certain type of situation that was put into place by governments, by multinational corporations, by a whole line of individuals who've been ripping off that country and setting or sowing the seed or the stage in place whereby that civil war will happen or must happen because there's grievances felt this way or that. So when you look at these distressing images on TV or hear about them, try to direct your energies not to the direct image that you see, but to the overriding causes of the situation. Get rid of the causes, and then help will come. For instance, the news says the United Nations has halved its donation. But why has the United Nations? That's what the news does not tell you. Is it because one country that was a prime donor suddenly decided that it was pulling out? What country is that? Or what countries? And why has that country decided to do so? It depends. You don't know what sort of dirty deals are happening in the United Nations. What power play is manifesting. America could withdraw its funding for a whole pile of issues because the United Nations is not towing its line on a particular thing that America wants. And therefore, there's a massive funding that's withdrawn because the United Nations is not, for instance, voting in a particular
UN resolution.
Yeah. that sort of thing. And this is what
And
happens
that's
all the time.
It's caught up in.
That's right. These sort of things we're not told on the news. We don't read about it in the papers. Eventually you get to find out about it through some brave soul that becomes a renegade of the United Nations. Or yeah, it's good that there are people like that, concerned bodhisattvas, that actually informing us, and sometimes to great peril for their own personal safety. The rest of the world as to what is actually happening. It's like even something like the Abu Ghraib jail, or how did those pictures come out in the first place?
The reporter who most recently told us the fact that the White House was planning to use nuclear weapons, and he broke that story the same
That's
day.
right. That's right. Risking going to jail for the benefit of many, many millions of people. These are the types of people, wherever they are, that need a lot of good energies poured into them. But not just them, but their pathways of their thought. Then you can actually maybe achieve something through your meditation. But if you focus upon the images, like that man or the woman that was, get heard she was raped by two men or whatever, you're not helping, you're aggravating the situation. And what happens? You get those images broadcast on TV, and then you get a lot of sympathetic well wishers out there in the mainstream public that immediately send them emotional energy. And what these people don't need is that emotional energy. What they do need is proper cleansing of the nadi system to the sources of their distress. Of course, we who are esotericists, we who think in terms of karma, can sit in our seats here and we can look, oh gee, that bunch of people were, for instance, just give you a rough thing, involved in a St. Bartholomew News massacre. They killed all the Huguenots. So here now they're suffering this. There's repercussions for actions done in past lives by whole groups, and then they incarnate in a situation like this where they must suffer the results of their group or mass karma. Whenever you look at warfare and actions like the one I just told you about, very rarely do they just stop at killing and raping. They normally loot and plunder, make themselves very wealthy from the victims' possessions. Look at the witchcraft trials and so forth. And when somebody makes themselves, they're not just suffering the karma of looting, or not just suffering the karma of the murder or whatever they did, they're also suffering the karma of the economic devastation they cause to a whole nation or to groups of people. And it necessitates them being incarnated in a warlike situation where they suffer massive economic devastation. They must pay for their wrongdoing. What we as esotericists are trying to do is trying to cleanse the psychic atmosphere of humanity so that this cycle of rape and plunder and pillage and war and all the rest of it is cleansed from the thinking. Therefore, we look at places like Iran, Iraq, the plight of women, there's women's issues in India, whatever. The ability to convert the thinking at this next higher level is far more guaranteed to succeed. And of course, we as esotericists then go to the highest level of all, which are the multinational companies, the incarnate sorcerers, the black magicians of ancient Egypt. Now they're money manipulators on a vast scale. This is just the new form of black magic, the new form of sorcery in this materialistic age. It's nothing else. They pollute, they destroy, they violate the emotions and mind spaces of countless beings with the rapacious attitudes. They manipulate whole governments on a mass scale for their own benefit. This is sorcery, nothing else but. They are your prime adversaries. And these are the main ones to really zap. And I think you should, from my point of view, start to see the faces of these heads of multinational corporations, the high-flying financiers and so forth, and start to cleanse the reticulated network of Dark Brotherhood. If you make it so they can't function because of the light that's going into their heads, they may even go insane, do something stupid that lands them in jail. That's what Hierarchy did with him, made him insane. Well, after Hitler, what did you get? You got America. America took its place. So we're now trying to figure out how to disenthrone America, because it is the source of all of this evil. Much more powerful than Hitler was as George Bush. And the next one that comes up, and he goes, black versus white magic. The white Dharma and the black Dharma. That is really the only game in this universe. All there really is. We are trying to turn everyone into Buddhas, and they're trying to turn everyone into sorcerers. Keep the materialism they love intact, and we're trying to produce liberation. And what is the game? It's conversion. You can also use the term alchemy, convert base mineral substance into the philosopher's stone, base mineral mines into the elixir of enlightenment. When we have greater numbers, when there's more of us, then we can start to direct beams of light to specific arenas on this planet that we know those beams of light have to be directed to. There will be financiers. There will be the major money manipulators. There'll be companies like Monsanto, the World Bank, and so forth. This is where energy will be directed for to cleanse those psychic pathways, or to maybe produce a seed of love somewhere in those black hearts, or a seed of conscience, of compassion, something like that, somewhere there. Does this make sense to all of you? This is the way when you talk about these types of issues, that you have to get people to think. It's all too easy to look at the image of the woman with her dying baby and to give that woman and the dying baby a lot of energy and sympathy. It's fine, there's millions doing that. But you have to look at the causes and work at eliminating those causes in your meditation, not the immediate image. She's representative of a whole sickness, a whole malignancy affecting our planet. It's not one, it's not 1,000, it's a massive tumor that is gnawing away at the liver or the heart or whatever of the modern world. That's what needs cleansing. The water to come is part of the cleansing process, but it's not enough. Humanity afterwards will just simply reassert their malicious, selfish, aggrandizing way.
Because I know, like, if you've got someone, well, obviously,
That's
really
right.
with the real DBs, you're trying to destroy their position. Otherwise, you're just giving them energy and they just crop that and use it for their own purpose.
You actually have to wipe out their materialistic thinking process, so that they think with a little bit more light. And if it is done often enough, you may be surprised that somewhere in the road of the life of that being, they do a complete turnaround and start to become compassionate. There are a few like that have got a capacity to split personalities, part black, part white, because they are magicians from past lives. Like some of you here have done their black magic and have been converted to the white and have been converted back to the black, and so there's a battle going on in them as to who controls their resources. And it's worthy, this is where again Bodhicitta comes in. It clarifies your vision so that you know where to direct your energy in your time, in your meditation, and in your actions. It's a motivation force that clarifies vision. Is this a good definition of bodhicitta? The mind of compassion. The mind aspect is that which clarifies thought. Compassion is that which motivates you to do, that drives you to act rightly because of the vision you have received. You can see, therefore, that to help such a being with this planting sickness takes a long time, much meditation, and you're working with other meditators. The more they're involved in the same meditation, the more potent your force. But it has to be with bodhicitta. And for us, the way of generating bodhicitta is not enchanting the mantra over and over again of generation as given in the Buddhist books. It's simply to open up our hearts and our minds to the hierarchy of light, because they are the active, emanating, dispensing force of this energy, and allow that process, that mind, to work through your heart and mind. And with them and you in coordinated unison, you work upon the problem of planetary salvation and rectification of the ailments thereon. We work, therefore, over a far vaster time scale than, for instance, the little time scale to do with the incident that we see now, Darfur or in Abyssinia or whatever it is. These are recurring boils or pusses or infections within a localized part of the body of the mind of the world, whereas we're also looking at the entire sickness. And understand there are many younger disciples whose job is rightly to deal with the localized infections. And as you get older on the path, you'll work more with the overriding causes of the sickness rather than do band-aid treatment on a small part of the body. Those that are doing the band-aid treatment are doing what is right for them according to their karma, and we energize them for that. We thank them very much for that service work. But we get on with tackling the big issues the best we can over a vaster time scale. It may take quite a few lives of work to achieve this big issue, cleansing or rectification. And that is the difference between a younger initiate and one of greater spiritual age. We have to have much more patience. But one of greater spiritual age is continuously, steadfastly involved in active service work. There's no break. One of the reasons I've given this little talk is that what I would like you all to do when you see these types of images on television, and you'll see a lot of the war images and atrocities, of course, on the propaganda of our nations, but not to think emotionally and react emotionally in terms of individual situations, but to think compassionately and always look at the broader picture rather than that one image you're looking at, that one person. It's like looking at a beggar on the street in India, and you can give that beggar a rupee or two, that's not going to do much than maybe one meal or a portion of a meal. But the real problem lies in the government of India. Its lack of concern for the poor